Everything, and I mean absolutely everything, can change in a matter of seconds in this league. Welcome to NFL Nexus. I'm your host, and today, well, we are not just looking at a standard run-of-the-mill news recap. We are diving deep into a cinematic explainer of the high-stakes, incredibly unforgiving reality of the NFL offseason. You see, on the surface, the offseason looks like a quiet period, but underneath, it is a brutal, calculated battle for survival. We're going to examine the absolute slimmest details, the microscopic margins of error that can literally end a professional career before it even truly begins. But before we dissect this ticking clock and the immense, suffocating pressure mounting down in Houston, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, and comment down below with what you thought. And hey, if you truly want to support our deep dives and help us keep bringing you this premium content, please consider becoming a channel member. Okay, let's dive into this. 11. Just let that number sink in for a second. 11. That is the exact number of weeks remaining until the 2026 regular season begins. Just 11 weeks. Now, for a franchise quarterback or an established, highly paid All-Pro, 11 weeks feels like an eternity, right? It's a comfortable, quiet buffer. It's time to rest, to recover, and to systematically prepare the body for the grueling, violent months ahead. But for others, for the specific names we are about to discuss today, those 11 weeks feel like the walls are rapidly and violently closing in on them. Every single day, every single isolated rep in the sweltering Texas heat is a terrifying countdown to survival. The Houston Texans still have a ways to go before Week 1 gets underway. But for the fringe players fighting for their football lives, the guys on the bubble, the margin for error has already completely vanished. It is do or die right now. And that brings us to this phrase: serious jeopardy. These aren't just media buzzwords, guys. This isn't just a catchy headline. This is a phrase pulled straight from the Texans' actual offseason reports. This is the stark, chilling reality surrounding multiple players drafted to Houston across the past few years. We are talking about highly touted draft picks, men who were brought into this building with fanfare and expected to be foundational pieces of a championship puzzle, who now find themselves completely and utterly backed into a corner. Their chances of finding a significant role on this year's squad, or even just surviving the brutal, unforgiving 53-man roster cutdown, are hanging by the absolute thinnest of threads. This explainer is going to put a heavy, microscopic lens on 3 specific recent draft picks who are dangerously close to losing everything they've worked for between now and cutdown day. Let's start with Section 1. Cade Stover. Trapped in the tight end room. When Cade Stover was selected in the 4th round of the 2024 NFL Draft, there were immense expectations placed on his shoulders. He had the pedigree, he had the talent, but right now, heading into this 2026 season, Stover is essentially trapped. He is walking into a training camp where the sheer volume of competition is, frankly, overwhelming. In fact, if you look at the roster, the raw talent assembled in this specific position group is arguably the absolute strongest it has been since head coach DeMeco Ryans first arrived to change the entire culture of the franchise back in 2023. Stover is trapped behind an imposing, immovable wall of veterans. Look at these names: Dalton Schultz, Marlon Klein, Brevin Jordan. All 3 of these men are feeling like surefire, undeniable roster locks at this very moment in time. They have the established chemistry, they have the critical in-game reps, and most importantly, they have the immense trust of the coaching staff. And then, just to make matters even more complicated, you add Foster Moreau to the mix. The reports coming out of camp make it crystal clear: Moreau's chances to make this team are incredibly strong. Why? Because you cannot easily replace his veteran experience, his proven locker room leadership, and crucially, his elite blocking upside. So let's do the math here. If the Houston Texans place all 4 of these massive names ahead of Stover on the depth chart, the mathematical reality becomes absolutely terrifying for the young tight end. It leaves almost zero physical room for him to make the final 53-man cut, let alone see the field for valuable playing time on Sundays. So, what is his lifeline? How does a player in his highly precarious position actually survive the chopping block? Well, this right here is the exact microscopic path Stover must walk during training camp. And let me tell you, it is a tightrope without a safety net. Step 1, he has to carve out a highly unique tight end and fullback hybrid role. He has to show a level of absolute, undeniable versatility that makes him literally impossible to cut. But honestly, even that might not be enough in a room this crowded. So step 2, he must prove he can be a legitimate vertical threat in the passing game, stretching the seams of the defense against starting caliber NFL safeties. He has to make explosive plays. And step 3, he has to match the veterans blow for blow and contribute as a dominant run blocker at the point of attack. Actually, think about what that really means. If he fails to check every single one of these hyper-specific, highly demanding boxes, his future in Houston could be over before it truly begins. It is a pivotal, suffocating training camp on the horizon for him. There is literally nowhere to hide. Moving on to Section 2. Blake Fisher, the high pick on the outside. Of anyone on this list, Blake Fisher is bound to have the most eyes entirely fixed on him. And for good reason. As a 2024 second-round pick, he was the highest draft selection of the three men we are dissecting today. And we all know how the NFL works. When a franchise spends a premium day 2 pick on an offensive tackle, you aren't just expected to fight for a spot on the practice squad, you are expected to be a 10-year cornerstone, a franchise anchor protecting the quarterback's blind side. Yet, his standing is now in serious peril because of the relentless, aggressive work Houston has done to overhaul their tackle room over the past 2 off-seasons. Look at this comparison. It is jarring. Just last year, he was listed as a starter for 10 games. 10 games in the National Football League. For a young offensive lineman, that level of exposure and trust from the coaching staff should completely solidify your future, right? Wrong. Fast forward to today, and he is reportedly slotted as the OT4 on the depth chart, the 4th string. This is a shocking, rapid fall from grace. It is a completely new season, and the Texans' offensive line looks fundamentally different than it did just 12 months ago. It is a harsh reminder that what you accomplished on tape last year does not guarantee you a single, solitary snap today. And here is the specific, towering reason his world is crumbling: the veteran roadblock, Trent Brown. This isn't just some vague camp rumor we're talking about here. Let's look at the smallest, most revealing details from the offseason program. During OTAs and minicamp, while Braden Smith was sidelined due to injury, it was Trent Brown, the veteran who started 7 games last season, who stepped up and took all of the first-team reps at right tackle. Every single one of them. Not the highly drafted second-round pick Blake Fisher. The coaching staff analyzed the roster, looked at the talent on the field, and deliberately chose the veteran. That single, isolated coaching decision speaks volumes. It actively pushed Fisher even further down into the shadows of the depth chart, leaving him completely on the outside looking in as the critical make-or-break weeks of summer rapidly approach. Let's really break down the sheer gravity of this situation for Fisher. The names sitting firmly and safely ahead of him right now are an immovable blockade: Ariante Erzuri, Braden Smith, Trent Brown. Now, you might be wondering, could the Houston Texans mathematically carry 4 tackles heading into Week 1? Yes, technically, they very well could. It happens. But the sources are crystal clear on this. There are absolutely no guarantees for that final spot. None. Whether Fisher stays on this roster depends entirely on how other positional battles across the deep corners of the team pan out. He no longer controls his own destiny, and that is the most terrifying place for a football player to be. For his 3rd professional season, this training camp isn't just important for Blake Fisher, it is a massive do-or-die scenario where every single false start, every blown assignment or misblock could literally be his absolute last in a Texans uniform. Which brings us to Section 3. Dylan Horton, the prove-it year. Selected in the 4th round back in the 2023 draft, Dylan Horton is walking into the single most pivotal training camp of his 4-year career in Houston. The developmental runway? It has officially ended. The grace period for learning the ropes? It is over. The front office is demanding immediate, game-altering production from him. And the stakes are phenomenally high for Horton right now, because the door to greatness is sitting wide open. The Texans lost to Nico Autry and Derek Barnett. Those are massive, highly productive departures in the edge rusher rotation. You don't just replace that kind of veteran savvy overnight. Now, Houston desperately needs a key reserve. They need an edge 3 to sit directly behind their defensive superstars, Will Anderson and Daniel Hunter. You need a reliable, violent 3rd man to keep those absolute game wreckers fresh late in the 4th quarter when the game is on the line. Simply based on his tenure in the building and his familiarity with the defensive scheme, Horton should be the early, undeniable favorite to get that nod. It is a golden, career-defining opportunity staring him right in the face. All he has to do is reach out, grab it, and refuse to let go. But, and this is a massive but, that's exactly where the tension really sets in. Because his production through his first 3 years on the active roster just doesn't jump off the page. Let's look at the granular details of his career so far. Point 1. 42 combined tackles across 4 years. If you break that down mathematically, honestly, that is barely a blip on the radar for an edge defender in today's NFL. Point 2, he's played in barely 25% of the Texans' defensive snaps. He just hasn't been on the field enough to establish a dominant rhythm. And point 3, his primary noticeable impact has mostly been relegated to the special team side of the ball. Now look, for a fourth-round pick trying to find his footing in a complex defense, that's not a terrible start to a professional career. You have to earn your stripes. But time is actively running out. That kind of minimal background production simply will not cut it when a championship-contending team needs a reliable, rotational defensive piece to hunt opposing quarterbacks in January. The standards have been raised, and Horton's past production isn't matching the current requirements. Which leads us directly to this harsh, uncompromising reality staring Dylan Horton in the mirror every morning. Step up or get replaced. It really is that simple. If Horton does not immediately step up to the plate and become a real, tangible impact player defensively right now, during this specific camp, the Houston Texans will not wait for him. They simply cannot afford to wait. The championship window is open now. The reports indicate that Houston could easily decide to sign a veteran replacement via free agency at a moment's notice. The front office is always working the phones. Or, even worse for Horton's pride and his career trajectory, they could find a younger, hungrier contributor buried further down the depth chart, someone willing to bleed for that spot and simply move them right past him. Everyone knows the old saying, the NFL stands for not for long. And Dylan Horton is living that terrifying pressure cooker reality right this very second. So, we arrive at the final verdict, 11 weeks to survive. We come back full circle to where we started. The clock is relentlessly, mercilessly ticking down to the opening kickoff of the 2026 season. You have Cade Stover physically trapped behind a mountain of established, highly trusted veterans, praying he can showcase enough hybrid versatility to justify a roster spot. You have Blake Fisher plummeting down the depth chart at terrifying speed, despite his high draft pedigree and his previous starting experience, completely at the mercy of the numbers game. And you have Dylan Horton staring at a golden, career-defining opportunity to be a key edge rusher, but entirely lacking the dominant resume needed to confidently lock it down. This right here is the brutal, uncompromising business of the NFL 53-man roster. Every single practice rep, every intense, sweat-soaked film session, every isolated, seemingly meaningless snap in a preseason game carries the absolute weight of their entire professional livelihoods. There are no safety nets left for these guys. Will Stover prove his unique versatility and mathematically force the coach's hands? Will Fisher somehow reclaim his lost status, fight his way back up the depth chart, and prove he truly belongs in the trenches? Will Horton finally break out, realize his massive potential, and seize that vital edge 3 role before the front office brings in someone who will? Or will Cut Down Day coldly and unceremoniously claim all 3 of these former draft picks, casting them out into the highly unpredictable, unforgiving waters of free agency? The true drama of this offseason is only just beginning, and you better believe we will be watching every single microscopic moment unfold. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. If you want to keep following this incredible cinematic offseason drama, make sure to hit that subscribe button for NFL Nexus, like this explainer, and comment down below on who you think actually survives and makes the final 53-man roster. And remember, please support the channel by becoming a channel member so we can keep bringing you these deep, intense, documentary-style dives into the absolute smallest details of the game. Until next time, keep your eyes on the clock.